Hi, I'm Lisa Jane, and I'm talking to my friend Karen Sedgway about conscious sovereignty, which is a topic that I have been really feeling the urge to pursue lately. So I don't know where this conversation is going to take us, but we're here bringing our presence into this field. So, Karen.
Uh, yes, thank you. I am located in the Wombat Forest in central Victoria, and I have just discovered a fabulous friendship with this beautiful Lisa Jane, who's up in northern New South Wales, and wonderful places that we both live in. But yeah, so the conscious sovereignty is really up and running and in the forefront, I think, of humanity right now. And it's creating a lot of havoc with a lot of people, and it's creating a lot of life changes for others. And I think I think the boat is, perhaps we just use a metaphor and think about that we're in rowing our own boat of sovereignty, but through this sort of like wild weather of consciousness through this. Actually, it feels like a storm sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's true. I think that it's like for me, it's been really interesting because there's a lot of things that I haven't even delved into yet. But what I've noticed is in the last couple of months, it's almost like I'm seeing, because my mind has become so clear with, just the work I've been doing and really stepping into these new levels of awareness. And it's almost like seeing any areas of my life where I don't fully have authority, and how in those little areas I may still have these reactions from my inner child, for example, which might be, they sort of have my power. And as I become more aware, it's like, well, no, nobody does. As in my divine presence, I am the authority. And so for me, it's been this process of really stepping into that and taking that back, which is why we're having the conversations we're having. So I'd really, be great to hear like your ideas on even the words we use. Like, it's just so fascinating how when you open a door and you look and you just go, whoa, I didn't even see all that stuff.
That's right. Yeah, I've been playing with the concept of language for a while. I'm a bit of a linguist in many ways, and often the words that we actually speak are pretty much in English, or a lot of Latin-based languages tend to steal your sovereignty away without you even realising it. And it's I don't know if people are familiar with something called admiralty law, but you don't need to know about that, but it might be worth exploring. But a lot of the words that we use every day, and the spelling of the words and the meanings of them are so different, but they actually have the same frequency. So if you're casting a spell, but what is a spell? A spelling. We're spelling something, so we're casting a spell by our words. And it's a really interesting concept because for me, I've been working with the Tree of Life and the Hebrew alphabet for more than 20 years. And the principle that I find so fascinating about that, or the philosophy, or actual truth really, to do with the resonance and creation of sound. And, we've heard often that sound, everything was created from sound. And our names have a frequency. So all the Lisas in the world, all the Karens in the world attract a certain energy to them because of the frequency or the resonance that the naming of their or the sound of their name has. So when we say the word Karen or when we say the word Lisa, you can ascribe that to the Hebrew alphabet, and it gives it the actual resonant frequency of what you're invoking by that sound. And we know about prayer, we know about mantras, but how come we forgot about the language that we speak every day? How come we don't link that to our names, especially our names? So people do praying to the beautiful deities within which they are feeling strongly and spiritually aligned, and they call those names, and they're calling in a frequency. So that's what I think is very important now for us to begin to become more aware of the words that we actually use each day. And I call it sacred language. I play with that, and I play with how we can reuse our language as a much fabulous motivator to be so much more uplifting than using let's say I make up words because I love the sound of alliterations and things. So we think about environment, right? Everyone's talking about the environment. And I'm like, wow, environmental. So it's a mental concept about nature. It's a mental concept about nature. So it's environmental, or it's ecological, which is, again, it's a mindset around nature. It doesn't speak to our feelings. It's about logic and about mentality of it. So say if you just change 2 letters in the word ecological, you take out the L and the O, you put in an M and an A, you end up with eco-magical, which is really what it is. Mm. And so also environment, I say, well, I call myself an eco-magical enviromantic. So it's like I'm connecting what means something to me to that environment. And we realise when we look at a lot of the words, it's really, in many ways, dumbing us down. It's taking away the heart out of a lot of our conversations. In the last, 40 years or so, it's being emotional. It seems to be a problem. You need to be logical. You need to get with reality, whatever that means. And so our languaging is really controlling a lot of that frequency. And, in the olden days, we had the beautiful choirs and Georgian chants and the Indian mantras and how they transport us into another land. But with our pedestrian, I might say, conversations, especially in English doesn't have a lot of words that can describe extraordinary spiritual circumstances like German, like High German or Ancient Greek, have words that describe amazingly beautiful spiritual states or aspirations, whereas the English language doesn't have that. So a little bit of studying around that was to do with English is really set up as a trading language. It's set for trade around the world. And what's interesting is that many cultures are forced to actually learn to speak English as their second language, and English people aren't forced to speak any other language. And I think that's terrible, because we're so rule the world with English, and we don't have to, everywhere we go, people, oh, you English, I speak English, but it's, except for the French, I think they're amazing. They go, oh no, we're going to do that.
Bringing that into like my work and thinking, because like as you're talking, I'm like, wow. So if we're talking about the identity or the separated state, that, when we're living through this identity and not as our true presence, as our true nature, and we're conditioned to live this. So, and there are so many little things that have conditioned us and programmed us to stay there. And one of those is the word. So what you just shared then, it was like these words that create separation and affirm this identity that is not true, that is powerless, that is helpless, that has no authority with the true presence. And wow, wow, because I just feeling the difference in the words, even like for me, like knowing the feeling of the experience keeps you in the moment. Like I'm here and now and I feel the experience. And if I'm in nature, taking it into my head and using words that create separation means I miss out on the experience of connection, which is exactly what you're saying. And it's like, that's where the power is when we're actually connected to everything. So, I love that.
So if we look at governing the mind, meant governmental, right? And I think that's a bit hilarious, because the government is ruling the mind, and then what happens with the department? It means they've left their mind, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Department. And the trading language, it's like identity, break that down. It's an ID, entity. It doesn't exist. You know, so it's the ego entity. So the id was the psychological name for ego. I think that might have been Freud who did that. But entity, when we talk about an entity, it's a non-physical thing. So they want to give you an identity which is a non-physical thing, which means that you don't exist. And so within what we might call this Admiralty law, we actually don't exist, because the law of the land has put us to we've left the law of the land, and we've been replaced by the law of the sea. And many words that we use to do with economics, and that's another hilarious word. How can you grow an economy? It's like, how can you have a square circle? Because economy means being prudent with money. How can you grow an economy? Why is it called an economy? You can't grow it. It's those two words don't work together. It's not economical. If it's economical, someone's economical with the truth. It's a lovely way of saying something. But growing the economy is a complete furphy, because neither of those words can go together, like a square circle or a circle square. Some other words that are very interesting. Entrance, when we go to a shopping centre, we go through the entrance. So we are entranced by that. So these are just some of you can start looking at them. There's a woman, oh my gosh, I just forgot her name. She's written an amazing book. She's like an absolute fairy. She calls herself a fairy. Oh, I'm so sorry, I can't remember her name. But she wrote this amazing book on the spells in the English language, about how we're actually talking ourselves into servitude rather than using sovereign language. So a sovereign language is a much different way of being able to communicate. And we talk about sovereignty in a language that's holding us prisoner. Isn't that kind of hilarious? So it's becoming aware of it. I mean, it can make you crazy because we've been so programmed with all these words. It's really hard to change that. And so say if you say the word good, you say the word morning, like morning, there's two meanings for that, isn't there? Morning and morning. And it's still the same. The thing is, it's the same sound. That's the key to it. It's the same sound. So one is we're mourning the loss of something, and the other one is good morning. But the frequency of the word, the way that it sounds, is the same. So that's to do with Admiralty law. And if we're awake, when we become awake in the morning, what else is called awake?
Yeah, wow.
At a funeral.
Yeah.
So all those things, you begin to look at it and you go, oh, so it's greetings or bonjour, or other people are saying good dawning, which is a little bit trite, but you know what I mean? It's hard. And I like the sound of the word morning. It's got, it's nice.
No, I've been trying to change it since you told me that. And I've say. Yeah.
What do you say? I mean, it's lovely. In French, it's like bonjour. It's like good day. It's like, oh, fantastic. So Australians do say good day, or good day, or howdy is another one, or greetings, or salutations, whatever. But again, the programming is so interesting. And yeah, there's a lot of them that are really say with different names, like the word justice. What is that? Break that down. Just ice. And
ice melts.
That's right. That's what we're looking at it. So yes, there's a lot of words that do that. But if we look at the word sovereign, let's look at that. And so it has rain in it, REI. Yeah, I think reign, yes. So sovereignty is the reigning over ourselves. But again, I always thought this was hilarious because there's a gender specific languaging as well, which also divides male and female. In what you might call patriarchal language. So, we have a king and a queen, and, it's in many of the spiritual books that you read from the old days, it's all about all about men and about he is written in it and all this kind of thing. And women get a little bit about that. But looking at the word, so the word, one of the female words that's been hijacked by patriarchal language is highness, right? So how can you have His Highness, I call him, King Charles Spaniel III, but what can you say? So His Highness, how can he be His Highness? Because we have goddess, priestess, hostess, all the words with ESS are attached to a male noun to give it its feminine side, which also is a little bit interesting. It might be better for it to have completely different words that delineate that. However, the word that's been hijacked by the patriarchal language is the word highness, because it's a female adjective, isn't it? Because it has ESS on the end of it. But here's another word that I love that has ESS on it, is consciousness. So isn't that kind of interesting that the ESS mostly delineates a female gender or pronoun or adjective or noun, but consciousness is my favourite one because I'm just being, I'm a female, I love Gaia, I'm a Sophian, whatever. So consciousness has this lovely, beautiful ring of the Sacred Mother to it, which I really like. And so, and sovereign is often, the sovereign of the land is often seen as the male aspect too. So it's fun.
Yeah, that sort of brings us back to the feeling state, which I think is so much about us shifting out of this realm of separation and where we're often ruled by fear or our programming or our conditioned mind, moving into the wholeness that we are. Really, for me anyway, it was so much about reclaiming my body, reclaiming the feelings, reclaiming everything that's here in the moment and being okay with everything that's here in the moment. And so much of that is about this beautiful, if you think of like the mother as being this really soft, gentle, loving of what is. I mean, I think in a way that's been a little bit corrupted, because for women it's meant that we've had to abandon ourselves, and I don't actually think that is right. I don't think that is part of what's expected of the female. I think it's being that loving, compassionate, feeling the experience and being in the moment, but being fully present and not having to put myself last or down the bottom of the rung, which is another way that I think, our society has created this separation and this disempowerment. But I love that, coming back around to the feeling and how might we be more at ease with our feelings, which then helps us really perceive the feelings that are involved in the words we use. Like we have to be able to feel it to know whether or not it's serving us, right?
Yeah. Yes. And the feeling of words, some of the words just make you feel amazing, like what do we do when we breathe in? We take in the oxygen. Inspire. It's like it's an inspiration. That's a beautiful word. Or to aspire. There's some really magical words that we can really process in a beautiful way. I was just thinking about what you were saying. So say if we look at that old one about a human being or a human doing, all this kind of thing. And also the word human has got some issues around it, because if you put two letters in front of any known word, it makes it opposite, So human is a monster. So two letters in front of the man makes that, changes that to a monster, right? And that's one school of thought. But then there's that sound of ooh, ooh, and to do ooh, it can only come through the heart. So in recognizing the way that how to use that language for man, and man in Hebrew is actually everyone. It's not just masculine. So it's another word that's been, sequestered. So mankind, it's and we all get thinking about that. We go, oh, what about the women, et cetera, or the womb man? Right? You know what I mean? Like a woman is a man with a womb, a human with a womb, man. So M in Hebrew, mem is mem, which is the great mother, right? So the great mother gives birth, Aleph, A, because Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and it gives birth. So the great mother gives birth, and N is Nun, which means death. So the word man, in the way that it sounds, is the entirety of the birth of humanity until the death. And that's just absolutely, the word itself is extraordinary because it encompasses the whole way of the psychology of being born and dying, and it's lovely. And so that's been taken across to mean a male gender, right? Where it's actually a word that can be used for everybody. It's just, I mean, I don't know if others have seen it in that light, but what I do is I take a lot of English words and then I put them against the Hebrew alphabet, and each letter in the Hebrew alphabet has a little beautiful meaning or a piece of poetry attached to it. So you kind of create a poetry of meaning just around your own name or around the word man, which is the great mother giving birth and the changing of the cycle or the death and transformation that comes from the word nun, which is N in Hebrew. So it's really quite something. And sovereignty is, it's not, you don't get given, no one gave us a crown and a jolly, staff and said you're sovereign, much as that ceremony is very powerful, but it's a way of being sovereign, as you were saying before, in yourself, not hoping that the outside will give it to you through, I know there's a lot of interesting common law and law of the land and admiralty law and everything like this, and you can get caught up in all those rules and regulations and stand on your own 2 feet, if you're challenged by a system that's actually taken hundreds of years to take away our sovereignty without us realising. So it's called the law of consent, whereas if you don't argue about something, then you've consented by not saying anything. That's a simple way of looking at it. But that sovereignty that you have within yourself, and you said this great word, which is presence, not present. So the word presence is different to the word present, because present has, again, 2 meanings, doesn't it? So you give it to somebody, but you break that word down again. Break down the word present. What happened?
Present. I present it.
It's already. You can't be in the present with the word present. It's, again, not possible. So you kind of, the way that you look at it in those terms is I'm in the now. There's nothing you can do with that word. You're in the now with your presence, because you can't be in the present with the word present because it's already happened. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. And people could just go semantics, and fair enough.
Get crazy.
However, for me, the proof comes in the pudding when you can actually feel the difference. Like you can feel there is something that is not substantial. That you can, and this even when you look out in the world that we have now. Like there are so many self-proclaimed gurus and experts. But when you really get in touch with things, you can feel that there's no substance. So if you're using words that are, that they corrupted words, or, words like we're talking about, you can sort of feel that there's no truth, there's no substance, there's something missing in them. And when you use words, like, you only need to start talking about your presence, the feeling of being now and feeling inspired, and you can actually feel that feeling in your body. So how can you doubt the power of the words that you're using when it can generate a feeling in your body?
That's exactly right. It's exactly right. It's so exciting, this whole opening of this awareness. And, and I guess there's all this, and I've, worked in, the healing, I don't know, I don't like calling it the New Age, but anyway, I've been involved in that world for 40 years. And I used to make jokes. It's a little bit mean, but look, I used to say to people, because people would often find themselves, pulling oracle cards every day to tell them what to do, or using the tarot. And I use the tarot all the time, but the tarot is not a fortune-telling tool. It is an oracle in its own way. But when you're pulling a card or doing something like that, it's only reflecting what you already are. It's not telling you anything new. You know what I'm saying? So it's not really fortune-telling in a way. It can tell a story. But there's this, when you're in the present or being in the now, there's another beautiful writer called Stephen Harold Booner who wrote a book called The Imagination of Plants, or The Imaginal Realm of Plants. And he was talking about the gateways of the senses. And this is another thing that's incredible, eco-magical, because as children, our senses, the gates are open. And so the kids, as children, or when you look into a child's eyes, a baby, you can see the soul there. All those, the baby is just, wow, an incredible being. And children see this incredible world because the gateways of the senses haven't been closed down yet. And they get closed down by language, because language is often, comes from the left brain. And then, they look at this thing and someone tells them it's a chair and they go, oh, I thought it was something, I thought it was a dragon, but, oh, no, that's a chair. Oh, okay. Well, that's the end of that then. But when there's exercises that we can do all through life, and I don't meditate with my eyes closed because I feel like I'm missing out on something. Just really, I'm a very much into the nature of meditation. And so meditation for me is looking at a leaf or a flower, or daydreaming is meditation, because I've opened the gateways of my senses, and I'm seeing things through a different lens. I'm seeing it through my senses, not through the logic of my mind, or what, a cat's a cat. Or, again, I thought it was, a griffin. I thought that was a fairy, a furry fairy or something, When you learn, it's not hard to learn, but it's just being able to shift your gaze away from determining that looks like a leaf. And if you didn't think it looked like a leaf, what would it be? And then that's when nature starts to speak with you. So whenever you go outside, there's no accidents. The kookaburra flew across your path. What's it telling you? I often, if a bird flies across the front of my car really close, it's telling me to slow down and just be aware of my environment, or just tuning in and letting the gateways of your senses begin to open. And it's kind of hard to close them once you see nature in that way. And nature, I mean, you can talk about the God story and everything like that. Well, nature is God represented, and everything in that, and there's no human hierarchy, and we're not the boss of the wash. We're kind of part of the part of the beautiful sacredness of nature. And if you take the humans out of something, or you take an animal out of something, you shift the balance, no matter what being it is. But just this, and I've loved the past. I mean, the past few years have been, really challenging and hard, but very enlightening and awakening in so many ways. And people have shifted their priorities. Many people around the world have shifted their priorities, and with so much astrological influences that have been happening, that haven't happened for thousands of years, etc. And the lining up, as I said, that alignment that we're feeling, with Gaia Sophia, or looking at nature and looking at the animals around us, and why that's important, because the animals around us transmute what's happening in our field to keep us well often. I have 3 big dogs. They've got a lot of work to do here in my house. I mean, it's very busy. And the forest is super busy where I live, and just the bird calls and all of that. And each of them, when you look at them, they've got their own sovereignty anyway, like the kookaburra who stole, my ham sandwich at Christmas one time. He had a right to that because he was in his sovereign being, and I thought that was amazing.
It's
so
such
I think
an experience, isn't it?
Losing track a little bit, but it's just that, having your way of being sovereign, and being with people that have the presence helps that individual sovereignty, really bloom. Do you know what I mean? Like when
totally
we're together,
agree. It's almost like it's like the feeling of presence. If I'm in my presence and you're in your presence, and we come together in our presence, it amplifies, and there's something much greater. And I totally think this whole being comfortable with our feelings and using the experience, like you said, experiencing nature, like it's a completely different reality. And I love the talk of the planets are aligning, and we're actually being brought back into alignment too. And I would love to have a chat about that. I think we should maybe end this conversation here and have another talk about the alignment, because that is so juicy. I'm just so excited. Even the words, so like
having fun,
having so much fun, and encouraging you just to feel the words, like really open the door and have a look. Because when I opened the door and had a look, I was just like, I never saw things like that. And it just like opens your mind. It's just so cool. Thanks so much, Karen. It's so awesome.
It's been so much fun. I really enjoyed. Oh, and we when we met, when we were in each other's presence, it took, 5 minutes maybe to realise who we were in each other's presence, and how we do exactly what you said. When we're together, there's this beautiful ease of amplification and consciousness, and it's just beautiful being with you. So
thanks.
Thank you.
So beautiful. So appreciative. That's wonderful. All right, well, thank you. Until next time.
Thank you. Until next time, I look forward to it.
Okay, sending love.